My name is Julie Hartley. I'm 28 years old. And this is the story of how I lost my wedding, my fiancé, and my family in one brutal move, and how I took everything back, piece by piece. I remember that morning like a scar you can't unsee. The house was quiet, not the usual morning bustle, no clatter of coffee mugs or my mom humming in the kitchen. Just silence. The kind that warns you before the storm hits. On the marble counter where she used to leave little sticky notes like "Don't forget to bring home cake samples, sweetie," was a folded sheet of paper. No greeting. No warmth. Just one line, typed in plain black font. Wed's off. Expect a call from our lawyer. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even touch the paper. I just stared at it like it might vanish if I blinked. My hand shook as I texted my mom one word, "Understood." Then I picked up my keys and left the house like a stranger. A guest who had overstayed her welcome. 2 days passed. Nothing. No calls. No accidental texts. Not even a mistaken email about the florist. It was like I had been erased. Then, a message from my cousin Miranda shattered the silence. "Julie, I think this was sent to you by mistake. But you need to see it." Attached was a screenshot from the family group chat, the one I had muted months ago. The chat was titled "Hartley Wedding Updates." Except, the bride wasn't me. It was Delilah. My younger sister. She had gotten engaged barely 2 months ago. Yet now, there she was, her name replacing mine on every document, every plan. The venue was the same. The band. The catering. Even the guest list. The same dress I had tried on 4 separate times was now being adjusted to new measurements. In the middle of the chat, Delilah joked, "At least this time the dress will be worn by someone who actually looks the part." My mother replied with a heart emoji. My dad? A champagne glass. I scrolled in numb silence. Past the menus. The floral arrangements. The timeline for photos. I had designed it all, down to the minute. And now, I was nowhere. Not even a footnote. But the worst was yet to come. The groom's name, Owen Williams. That wasn't my fiancé. Or so I thought. My fiancé's name was Hunter Beckett. Except, as I kept scrolling, I saw photos. Old ones. Hunter standing next to Delilah at a mutual friend's party. Hunter smiling with her on a boat trip I wasn't invited to. And then I remembered the strange excuses. The sudden cancelled dinners. The unexplained weekends away. My stomach twisted. They didn't just steal my wedding. They stole my life. And they did it smiling. I shut the chat down and opened my laptop. A new folder. I labeled it Evidence, Phase 1. Inside went every contract, invoice, and email thread I had ever sent about the wedding. The florist's original invoice still bore my name, Julie Hartley. Pastel whites and blue tones. The latest invoice? Now billed to Delilah Hartley. Peach tones and gold roses. Then the venue agreement. Originally signed by me, with a copy emailed to my mother for reference. But the new document? It still had my signature. Only someone had gone over Julie with black ink and written Delilah above it. Neat. Calculated. I pulled up the bakery contract. The one I had placed a deposit on. A quick call to the manager confirmed it. "Your mom said you transferred everything to your sister," he said. I hadn't. I never did. That night, I sat under a floor lamp in the living room, going through every file. I wasn't sobbing. I wasn't breaking down. I was building something. A case. A truth they couldn't silence. They thought I would stay quiet. Like I always had. But this time, they were wrong. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I printed every invoice, every email, every contract with a name that had once been mine and was now replaced like a smudge to be wiped clean. Somewhere between 2 and 3 a.m., I realized something chilling. This hadn't started recently. This had been happening long before the wedding was even planned. I remembered the time Delilah accidentally showed up at my venue tour. Or how she tagged along to a wedding expo I'd registered for, alone. At the time, I chalked it up to sisterly curiosity. But now I saw it clearly. Every coincidence was a calculated step. And every time I backed down, she moved forward into my space. The next day, I checked the joint wedding account my mom and I had opened together for managing deposits. The login didn't work. Access denied. I called the bank. The representative was polite, but the words hit like knives. The account ownership was updated 3 days ago. Request came from Ms. Nain Hartley. That was my mother. She had removed me, legally. I asked who had financial authority now. Delilah Hartley. And Ms. Nain Hartley is secondary. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I simply wrote it down. They had transferred control without telling me, using my past trust against me. My mom always insisted she just wanted to help. But I saw it now for what it really was, control, neatly disguised as care. When I signed a financial transfer form months ago at her insistence, just to make accounting easier, I had unknowingly handed her the keys. I thought it couldn't get worse. I was wrong. Later that night, I received an email from an old name I hadn't seen in years, Ethan Calloway. My college boyfriend. The one who left me without warning, just a short message, I can't do this. I'm sorry. I had never gotten over how it ended. The subject line chilled me, we need to talk. His message began, Julie, I know this is long overdue. But I can't stay silent anymore. What happened back then wasn't all me. I stared at the screen. He continued, your mother called me. Said you had anxiety issues. That you were emotionally unstable after college. She said that if I loved you, I'd let you go, that staying would only hurt you both. He attached a scanned document, a medical file from years ago, when I was hospitalized for exhaustion during finals week. Something I had confided to my mother in tears, never expecting she'd use it like ammunition. She said if I really cared, I'd walk away, Ethan wrote. So I did. I thought I was protecting you. I didn't respond for a full hour. Then I typed one word, why now? His reply came instantly, because I saw the wedding post. Delilah and Hunter. I thought it was your wedding. But then I realized it wasn't. And I knew. She's doing it again. I had to tell you. The walls I had built to protect myself began to shake, not from sadness, but from anger. Quiet, steady, rising anger. This woman, my mother, hadn't just manipulated a wedding. She had been manipulating my life. Who I dated. Who I could trust. Who I believed I was. And the people around me? They followed her lead, mistaking her power plays for guidance. But no more. I called Jace that night. My ex-fiancé. The man who left just weeks before the engagement was supposed to be finalized, saying it wasn't the right time. He answered on the second ring. Julie. I've been meaning to call. No small talk, I said. Tell me the truth. He was silent for a moment, then sighed heavily. Your mom called me. 2 months before I proposed. Said there were things I needed to know. She showed me documents, your medical history, credit card debt from years ago, a letter from your therapist. Said it was for transparency. I clenched my jaw. Did she threaten you? She didn't have to. She just said that joining the Hartley family came with responsibilities. Then she handed me a prenuptial agreement. It was brutal. If we divorced within 3 years, you'd forfeit all shared assets. It was like she was prepping for disaster before we even started. Did you sign it? No, Jace said quickly. I walked out. I didn't want to hurt you, but I was scared. I thought if I told you, you'd blame yourself. I almost laughed. Bitterly. I've been blaming myself my whole life. When I hung up, I felt something I hadn't in weeks. Clarity. I wasn't broken. I wasn't unstable. I was manipulated. The next morning, I created a new folder on my laptop, Evidence, Phase 2. I filled it with everything from Ethan and Jace. Scams. Emails. Screenshots. I had the receipts, in the most literal way. And that's when I made my decision. I wasn't just going to fight back. I was going to burn the whole facade down. By the time the sun rose that morning, I already had the email drafted. Subject, Official Notice, Termination of Unauthorized Interference. Recipient, Nain Hartley. My mother. I wrote it without emotion, without embellishment, just facts. Bulletproof, cold, final. All actions involving asset transfers, personal interference, and unauthorized decisions regarding wedding finances and contracts have been documented. If such actions continue in any form, I will proceed with all necessary legal measures, public or otherwise. This is the final warning. I hit send without hesitation. It wasn't a plea. It was a declaration. Then I waited. For 2 days, there was nothing. Not a call. Not a text. Not a single note slipped under my door like she used to when I was younger and we fought about curfews. But then, it arrived. Not from my mother, from her lawyer. A courier delivered a manila envelope to my apartment with a red stamped label on the front, Civil Lawsuit Notification, Julie Hartley. I sat down on the couch and opened it with the same steady hands I'd had since the betrayal began. 12 pages. Cold, clinical language. Accusations of unauthorized access to shared financial accounts. Embezzlement of wedding funds. Psychological instability, presenting reputational risk to the Hartley family. They were painting me as the unstable, greedy, vindictive black sheep. And doing it legally. For one moment, I felt like that lost girl again, the one who questioned if maybe her mother was right, that maybe I was too much. Too dramatic. Too emotional. But that girl didn't exist anymore. I took a breath, picked up the phone, and called Emma Rowe. Emma was a no-nonsense attorney I had worked with 2 years ago on a community fundraiser. Back then, I admired her precision, her calm in chaos. Now, I needed that steel. I need to file a counter-lawsuit, I said. Defamation. Misuse of personal information. Financial fraud. And I have evidence. She didn't ask why. She just said, send everything by tomorrow at 9 a.m. We start then. The next day, I walked into her office with 2 full binders. One labeled Wedding Timeline and Expenses. The other, Private Interference and Medical Misuse. We spent nearly 5 hours reviewing everything. She flagged every contract that had been tampered with, every forged name, every manipulated clause. When she was done, she looked at me, eyes sharp as a blade. They may be powerful in name, she said, but they're sloppy. And you're precise. That's our edge. That afternoon, we filed our countersuit. 3 primary charges. Deliberate defamation intended to damage my reputation. Unauthorized use of private medical information. Financial document tampering and fraudulent reassignment of assets. Included were attachments. The voice message from Ethan explaining my mother's threats. Screenshots from Jace detailing the prenup. Bank records showing the transfer of funds from the shared wedding account to an account under Delilah's name. The original venue contract, showing my name overwritten. I wasn't just defending myself anymore. I was building a case to expose how control can masquerade as care, how silence can become complicity. And I wasn't done yet. 3 days after we filed, I received another email. No subject line. No sender name. Just a simple message. I can't stay silent anymore. I'm ready to provide transaction records from that year. The sender email was m.jennings@archivefinance.net. My hands trembled. Mason Jennings. My mother's former accountant at the Hartley for Change Foundation. I forwarded the email to Emma without a second thought. She called me that evening, and I could hear the fire in her voice for the first time. Julie, this is the witness we never expected. He has the receipts. Literally. Mason agreed to meet us in person. We sat at a quiet cafe on Main and 11th. He looked tired, his eyes hollowed by too many sleepless years, but when he opened his leather case, I knew this was the moment everything would turn. Inside were years of donation records from the foundation. Each one labeled approved by Julie Hartley. But I had never signed a single one. He flipped through each transaction. Over 4 years, my mother had transferred nearly $96,000 in donations into personal trust accounts for herself and my father. Each transfer was just under audit thresholds, masked as event funds or media expenses. But they all shared the same flaw, the forged signature of Julie Hartley. Emma leaned in, nearly whispering. With this? They won't just lose the civil case. They'll be staring down criminal charges. I didn't say anything. I just stared at the papers. At my stolen name. At the trails of quiet betrayal etched in black ink. That night, I reopened my old social media account, the one I had deleted to escape the flood of wedding photos that didn't include me. And I posted this. My name is Julie Hartley. Over the last year, I have been erased from my own wedding. My name was forged. My assets were taken. I was accused of being unstable. But the truth? It's documented. Every signature. Every dollar. Every lie. This is not about revenge. This is about reclaiming the voice they tried to silence. I attached screenshots of my original wedding contracts. The bank's memo showing revocation of account access. Mason's documents proving fraudulent transfers. A message from Delilah mocking me, finally, the real bride. And a voice recording of my mother saying, she's all feelings. But what has she actually done with her life? No caption. No hashtags. Just truth. Within 24 hours, it had been reshared over 3,000 times. Hashtag Justice for Julie started trending locally. And the Hartley name? Was finally starting to mean something very different. The backlash came faster than I expected. By the second day, I was fielding messages from journalists, law students, and even old acquaintances I hadn't spoken to in years. Some offered support. Some asked for interviews. One woman messaged Julie, I always thought your family looked perfect. I had no idea you were living in a cage with silk curtains. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. The documents were doing the talking now. And the Hartleys? They went completely silent. No public statements. No denials. Not even a fake message from my mom trying to clarify misunderstandings. They were watching, waiting, probably praying it would all blow over. But I had waited my whole life to be seen. I wasn't going to let this moment pass. Then came the court summons. The trial date was set for October 18th at Richmond County Courthouse. I arrived that morning dressed in a long gray coat, my hair tied back neatly, a black binder clutched in my hands. Inside were labeled tabs, contracts, financial transfers, witness statements, forgery evidence. Emma walked beside me, calm and sharp-eyed, like a knight in tailored heels. Across the courtroom, my mother sat with her attorney. She looked smaller than I remembered. Dignified, yes, but tense. Rigid. Her fingers curled against her silk skirt like claws trying to hold on to a past that was slipping through her grip. Delilah wasn't there. Maybe they thought her absence would soften the blow. But no one could erase her name from the signatures, the wire transfers, or her mocking messages. The judge entered. A woman in her 60s with piercing blue eyes that scanned the room like a lie detector. She opened with a single line. "This courtroom is not for resolving emotional disputes. We are here for legal matters. And here, only the truth matters." I felt my spine straighten. Emma began the opening statement. Calm, measured, devastating. She described how I was gradually removed from financial access, how the documents bore altered names and forged signatures, how even my medical history was weaponized to isolate and discredit me. Then, the evidence. Each tampered contract displayed on screen. Each financial transaction highlighted. Mason's records. The prenuptial document. The screenshots. The voice recordings. Then, they played the recording of my mother speaking to Ethan. "Julie's always been fragile. If you care about her, let her go. For her own good." The courtroom was silent except for the sound of those words echoing off the wooden panels. Then it was their turn. My mother's lawyer claimed I had signed away financial rights voluntarily, that I had given implied consent, and that the Hartley family had merely stepped in to help redirect the wedding plans after Julie's emotional withdrawal. But the judge wasn't moved. She looked directly at my mother and asked, "Is there any document where Ms. Julie Hartley explicitly consented to these financial reallocations?" Silence. Not a word. My mother didn't even try to meet my eyes. In that moment, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Power. After nearly 3 hours, the judge ruled. The court acknowledges multiple irregularities in the financial handling of Ms. Julie Hartley's personal accounts and wedding assets. There is sufficient evidence of unauthorized asset transfer, document tampering, and potential misuse of a charitable organization's funds. Until further notice, full authority over the disputed wedding account and all associated records is transferred to Ms. Julie Hartley. Civil mediation will be required within 60 days before final judgment. I didn't cry. I didn't cheer. I just exhaled. It was only a first step. But it was mine. Outside the courthouse, the media was already waiting. I didn't stop to speak. But someone snapped a photo of me walking down the courthouse steps, head held high, binder still in hand. That photo made the front page the next day with the headline, "Julie Hartley Fights Back, Prestigious Family Faces Allegations of Forgery and Theft." That afternoon, I went back to the house I grew up in. Ashwood Street. The white gate still swung half open, the way it always had. The porch light still flickered. I stepped inside. It was quiet. Not peaceful. Hollow. The same lavender diffuser sat on the side table, but now the scent felt artificial, like an illusion trying to mask something rotten. I walked into the kitchen, placed a manila envelope on the table, and left the house keys next to it. Inside the envelope were a withdrawal of asset dispute form, a signed waiver of any claim to the family home, and one handwritten note. "I no longer belong here. Maybe I never did. Julie." I didn't slam the door when I left. I didn't look back. 3 days later, a courier arrived at my new apartment. No return address. Inside the envelope was a cashier's check for $38,200. The exact amount I had documented in court as the total wedding funds withdrawn from my account. No apology. Just a single line in the memo field. Wedding contribution refund. Frozen account dissolved. Proof that they knew. Proof that they were wrong. I didn't deposit it. I framed it. Right beneath the courthouse photo. And under the glass, I placed a brass plaque engraved with one sentence. "This is the cost of silence." I chose truth. In the weeks that followed the courtroom hearing and the arrival of that silent check, I didn't just heal. I transformed. It wasn't the money. It wasn't even the legal validation. It was the feeling of having ripped the mask off a lie so long it had become reality. For years, I thought I was just difficult. Too independent. Too emotional. Too stubborn to fit into the Hartley image. But now I saw clearly, I wasn't the problem. I was just the one they couldn't control. And I was finally okay with that. But I wasn't done. Because for every story like mine, I knew there were hundreds of other women, daughters, sisters, fiancées, who were being gaslit, silenced, and financially manipulated behind the curtain of family loyalty. And most of them would never make it to a courtroom. So I started something new. I registered a non-profit called Ashwood Resolve, named after the street where I grew up, the place that raised me and nearly erased me. Our mission was clear: provide legal resources, counseling, and financial education to women betrayed by those they trusted most, especially within their own families. I built the website myself. Simple, minimal, with a single tagline on the front page. I don't need an apology. I need justice. Within a week, women from across the country began emailing. Some just wanted to talk. Others were asking if they had a case. Most had never told their stories out loud. Emma volunteered as the organization's lead legal advisor. She offered pro bono consultations every Saturday at the public library. Mason Jennings, the quiet, exhausted man who had once held the ledgers of my mother's false empire, became our honorary financial ethics consultant. He finally had a place to use his knowledge without fear of retribution. By the end of the first quarter, over 300 women had reached out. Some sent anonymous messages. Others signed up for real support. We didn't offer miracle cures. We offered something more valuable: space. Clarity. A way forward. Meanwhile, the court case entered its mediation phase. My mother's legal team tried to pressure me into settling. Quietly. Privately. Without public continuation. They offered $75,000 and a non-disclosure agreement. I declined. Emma nearly laughed in their faces. She doesn't need hush money, she said. She has the truth. And a platform. Delilah, shockingly, remained absent through it all. No apology. No acknowledgement. Just carefully curated social media posts of her blessed life. Her wedding photos had all been archived. Reposted now with vague captions: "A day to remember." So grateful for love and new beginnings. No mention of where that day came from. Or who it was meant for. But what Delilah never understood is that you can't rebrand theft as destiny. And you can't bury truth in gold-trimmed photo albums. One night, while finalizing our foundation's first public event, I received a direct message on my old Instagram account. I hadn't checked it in days. It was from an account named Owen Williams.official. The name sent a spike through my chest. Hunter. The man who was once supposed to marry me. The message was short. Julie. I had no idea. Please, if you'll let me explain. I stared at the screen, heart steady this time. No longing. Just curiosity, the way you might inspect a long-extinguished fire to see what caused the blaze. I responded, simply. Then speak. A few minutes later, my phone rang. His voice was soft. Hesitant. Julie, it wasn't like that. At first, Delilah and we were friends. Close, but that was all. I never knew she was planning. I cut him off. You mean you never knew she was stealing my wedding? He fell silent. Then admitted it. I realized too late. Your mom, she told me you backed out. That you had emotional complications. That you'd agreed to give it all to Delilah. That it was your idea. I closed my eyes. And you believe that? I was confused, he said. But by the time I figured it out, Delilah was already making arrangements. Your mother said if I told you, she'd release your medical history to the press. She showed me the file. I panicked. I didn't want to hurt you. You already did, I said. And you never once tried to undo it. He didn't argue. Maybe he finally learned something. Before hanging up, I said, you may have walked into it. But you chose to stay. And you will live with that. I blocked his number after that. Not out of anger, out of closure. The kind that doesn't need revenge. Just a door that stays shut. The next morning, Ashwood Resolve hosted its first community event, When Family Crosses the Line. It wasn't glamorous. Just a small auditorium, a circle of chairs, some coffee and tea. But the power in that room, the stories told, the tears shed, the truths finally spoken, was bigger than any courtroom. One woman stood and said, I thought I was the only one. That maybe I was just too sensitive. But hearing Julie's story, I finally believed myself. I didn't speak much. Just listened. For once, I didn't need to narrate every detail. The story had already spoken. And it was echoing further than I'd ever dreamed. The fall came slowly that year. And for the first time in a long time, I could feel the change in the air without dreading what came next. I no longer feared silence, I had learned to thrive in it. Every morning, I passed the framed check and courthouse photo in my apartment. A monument to the storm I had survived. Not just the legal war, but the years of manipulation disguised as motherly love. Of being called too much when I wanted too little, just space, respect, truth. Then came the letter. A formal cream-colored envelope slid under my door. Not from a lawyer, not marked confidential, just handwritten in an elegant, familiar script. Nain Hartley. Inside, 3 pages of carefully penned words. No apology. No responsibility. Just lines like, you misunderstood everything I did for you. You always made things harder than they needed to be. One day, I hope you'll see that everything was for your protection. I folded it neatly and tucked it away in a drawer. Protection. That word had been her sword and her shield. Her excuse for making decisions I never asked for, erasing choices I had a right to make. But now I understood, her love had always been conditional. And her respect? Earned only by obedience. But I wasn't her pawn anymore. A week later, the final mediation session was scheduled. Emma and I walked into the neutral conference room, sterile, pale walls, polished wood table. My mother sat across from us, her expression unreadable, her lawyer adjusting his cuffs nervously. Delilah was there this time. She wore beige and pearls and didn't meet my eyes once. The mediator began. We're here to determine the final division of disputed funds, contractual rights, and public communications related to the events in question. Emma handled most of the session. I just watched as my mother tried to maintain composure while being read the list of documented fraud, unauthorized account changes, and foundation-level embezzlement tied directly to her name. Delilah finally broke the silence. Julie, you don't understand. I leaned forward, voice calm but firm. You wore my dress. In the venue I booked. On the date I planned. After the man I was engaged to. What exactly don't I understand? She flushed crimson, lips parted but no words came. I stood and pushed a thin envelope across the table. Inside, the final settlement proposal. It was my offer. I would drop the lawsuit for reputation damages. I would withdraw from further claims over the Hartley Foundation. In return, they would release all remaining wedding funds, relinquish any mention of me in PR statements, and submit a written admission to the Financial Oversight Board verifying falsified budget use under the charity. No NDA. No confidentiality clause. This wasn't going away quietly. Delilah's hand trembled as she passed the document to her attorney. My mother just stared at me. You're really going to do this to your own family? I looked her straight in the eye. No, Mother. You did this to yourself. I'm just giving it a paper trail. The silence that followed felt different this time. It wasn't heavy or hurtful. It was the sound of control shattering. 3 weeks later, the signed agreement arrived. Stamped. Executed. Included in the envelope was a second document, from the Oversight Board of the State Charity Committee. The Hartley for Change Foundation was officially under investigation. They would never again use my name to launder money through pity. That weekend, I stood before 70 women at a conference in Seattle titled Invisible Chains. I was the keynote speaker. And I didn't talk about betrayal. I talked about survival. How power isn't always loud, sometimes it's just the quiet decision to say no more. After the session, a teenage girl named Riley approached me. Eyes wide. Shoulders hunched. She whispered, "My mom makes me feel crazy every time I disagree. She tells me I owe her my whole life. Because she raised me." I took her hand gently and said, "You owe her respect. But you don't owe her silence. You get to have boundaries. You get to choose your future." She started crying. And I remembered being that girl, nodding, staying quiet, afraid of being the difficult daughter. But I also remembered who I became when I stopped apologizing for simply existing. That winter, Ashwood Resolve expanded to 3 cities. Emma helped train 2 new legal volunteers. Mason created a system for identifying red flags in family-run charities. I moved into a new apartment with tall windows and empty walls, just waiting for memories of my own choosing. No more curated rooms with lavender oil hiding anxiety. No more whispered warnings disguised as love. Just me. My story. My truth. And the women who now stood beside me. By the time spring rolled in, everything I had lost was no longer something I mourned. It was something I measured. A line in the sand between who I had been raised to be and who I had chosen to become. Ashwood Resolve had grown from a single-page website to a full-scale non-profit with legal advisors, trauma counselors, and even a monthly newsletter. We weren't just reacting to betrayal anymore, we were preparing women to prevent it. To identify manipulation early. To take ownership of their names, their rights, their futures. One Thursday morning, I received a letter from the state attorney's office. The investigation into the Hartley for Change Foundation had concluded. The result? Misappropriation of funds confirmed. My mother was fined, stripped of her honorary chairwoman title, and barred from operating any non-profit without oversight for the next 10 years. It didn't feel like revenge. It felt like release. But the most unexpected moment came a month later. I was walking out of a community seminar when a man stepped toward me on the sidewalk, tall, sharp-featured, nervous. He looked like he didn't quite know what to do with his hands. It was my father. The same man who once texted a champagne emoji in a group chat announcing my sister had taken over my wedding. The same man who hadn't spoken a single word to me in a year. He cleared his throat. "I saw the articles. The work you've done. I didn't realize." "You didn't want to," I said. "There's a difference." He nodded, shame etched across every inch of his posture. "I just wanted to say," he began, but trailed off. I waited. Let the silence speak louder than I ever could. "I should have stood up. I should have protected you," he said finally. I looked at him, not with hatred, not with hope. Just clarity. "You let them erase me," I said. "And I rebuilt without you. That's the legacy now." He nodded. "I understand." Then he walked away. And I let him. Because forgiveness isn't owed. Especially when the scars still carry your name. 2 weeks later, the Hartley name made headlines again, not for scandal, but for a story titled "Julie Hartley, the daughter they tried to silence, now leading a national movement." In the photo, I was standing in front of a room filled with women. No makeup crew. No designer wardrobe. Just a gray blazer and the truth. My truth. And that truth had set more people free than I ever imagined. Later that year, I gave the closing keynote at a women's leadership conference. The final slide of my presentation was a photo, not of the courthouse, not of the framed check, but of something else. A sticky note. The kind my mom used to leave me. But this one was different. It said, "You belong. You're not too much. You're finally enough, because you always were." That night, I stood in my apartment, barefoot on the cold floor, looking out the window as lights twinkled across the city skyline. I had no family dinners. No holiday invites. No mother texting recipes or father fixing porch lights. But I had something they never gave me, peace. I wasn't the obedient daughter anymore. I wasn't the cast-off bride. I wasn't the misunderstood emotional one. I was Julie Hartley, and I had rewritten the narrative. Not for revenge, but for resolution. Julie's journey is a powerful reminder that sometimes, the deepest betrayal comes not from strangers, but from those who claim to love us most. And in those moments, silence is not strength, truth is. She didn't seek vengeance. She sought clarity. And in doing so, she reclaimed her voice, her future, and inspired hundreds of others to do the same. What would you have done in Julie's shoes? Would you have stayed silent or stood up? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories on Revenge Echoes.